Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Precious Chibuku and I'm the founder of Dream to Impact. Welcome to the third week of our online skill acquisition program. And in this class, we have Sandra Osigwe here with us to take us on third week, to take us on building knowledge through critical reading and academic synthesis. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Just give me a second. Okay. So yes, our third week class is titled for the research track is titled Building Knowledge Through Critical Reading and Academic Synthesis. So how do you basically create or create a research paper? How do you summarize your thoughts? How do you get points for if you're writing a research paper? And our facilitator, Sandra Osigwe, is going to take us on this beautiful session. So to get started, this is our facilitator, right? Meet her beautiful face. So Sandra Osigwe is a fully funded PhD researcher at Sheffield Hallam University, where she explores tourism and consumer behavior. Her research focuses on how consumer attitudes and decision-making shape tourism experiences and destination choices. She holds a BSc in zoology from the University of the University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, Nigeria. Following her graduation, Sandra completed her NYC in Lagos, joining the Digital Space Capital as a marketing associate. Her destination led to her retention after her service year, and within 8 months, she was promoted to business team lead. Nice. The marketing team and drove business growth. Seeking to deepen her expertise, Sandra relocated to UK to pursue an MSc in international marketing. She graduated with distinction and achievement that paved the way for our current fully funded PhD. Beyond her research, Sandra actively volunteers as a student representative. In this role, she ensures student voices are heard while contributing to a more inclusive and supporting university community. Sandra is deeply passionate about conducting research that creates a meaningful impact for both academia and industry. Welcome, Sandra. It's nice to have you here. So before I pass the mic on to Sandra, usually, so like everybody here, set your intentions. What are the most important things or the most important thing, right, you want to get out of today's class? Just one thing. Better to be short and concise than to have a list. Just one key intention you want to set or you want to achieve after this class. Just 2 minutes, then we'll begin.
Should have closed their doors. These ones that are very distant.
Sorry, who's that? Just if you're joining, please unmute and mute yourself. Make sure you're not. Yes, I'm guessing everybody's done with their intention. So I'll just call a few people. If you're interested to speak, remember, um, engagement gets you points. So if you're interested to speak, and raise your hand, signify, and you're brought on stage to speak about what you think, what your intention, your most important intention for this class is. Raise your hand if you're interested to speak, or should I call anybody? Okay, so Rachel, Lady Rachel Itranati, right? So I don't know if is it the normal pronunciation of, okay, I hope I'm not butchering your name. So Lady, yeah, thank you. You can put on your video and unmute yourself and speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Sure. And I went through the module and I realized that this week is supposed to teach us to conduct literature reviews like scholars. And so
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to view papers meaningfully, not just reading and not knowing where to start from or how to put arguments together. So my focus is to learn how to read papers and connect them to my study. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Rachel. So you want to learn how to read papers extensively and connect them to your study. That's nice. So Chidima Umenadi, yes, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Good
So,
afternoon.
one of the most important things I want to learn from this class is how to make use of referencing tools like EndNote to like save references. Though I have knowledge of how to review papers, I've found it difficult on like to use those apps to save my references. So that's one of the most important things I want to learn.
Nice, nice. So how to use referencing tools, especially. Do you have any idea of what kind of referencing tools that exist to aid you? Do you have any idea
They
of that?
I have idea of
Mm-hmm.
them. I have idea of EndNote, but when it comes to like applying it, I find like I get stuck.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And you know they are also like when you say referencing tools, you mean the apps that exist or what elaborate on what you mean by referencing tools.
Like when you are writing papers, most times when I'm like writing an article and I want to save my references so that I don't lose track of them, I attach
Okay.
I attach the referencing part on the, let me say, inside the in-text citation so that I can be
Okay.
able to keep track of like the references. But I know that there are advanced ways of keeping track of my references,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like rather
Yeah,
than going manual.
manually. There are even
Yes.
some apps and websites you can use for your citation. And I guess that our facilitator Sandra would touch on that. So any other person wants to talk on their on 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 their intention.
Gracious, Gracious, are you
Yes,
happy to mute a very chupo from your own end?
okay, okay. Let me see.
Yeah, yeah, if you can mute her.
Very Chuku.
Yeah,
I'm not even okay, I'm seeing the name now.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. She's muted already.
yeah, yeah. I just observed that now. She just did that now.
Yes, yes, yes. So yeah. We're also waiting for our facilitator. She was here some minutes ago. I don't know whether
Yeah, I got a message.
okay.
I saw her a few minutes ago.
Yeah, she was here.
She's
Okay, she's
still
here
here.
now. She's
Yeah,
back.
she's
She's
still here.
back. She's
Yeah,
back.
yeah, she's
Yes.
still
Okay.
here.
Yes. So thank you, Chidima and Lady Rachel, for talking about your intentions. We'll begin now since our facilitator is here. Yes. Sandra, welcome.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I'll stop sharing my screen now so we can yes.
Do you want me to start sharing mine?
Yes, you can. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Mm.
Welcome, Sandra.
Oh, thank
Welcome,
you.
Sandra.
So your sharing request is not turned on, so I've sent you a sharing request.
Well, let me make you a co-host. Okay, yes. I've allowed you to share.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can everyone see my slide?
Not yet.
Okay, sorry. Can you see it now?
I think it's trying to load. Yeah, it's up now.
So
Okay.
it's
So I'll
trying
put
to
it in
load.
presenter
Yeah,
mode.
yeah, we can see it now. Yes, we can see it now, Sandra.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Sandra
Hi.
Osigwe, and I will be conducting a literature review on how to adequately do literature review. So before we start, I would like to say that literature review is not a black and white kind of thing. There's no straight answer to know how to do a literature review. Even us as a researcher, we try our best to keep learning how to present our ideas in a very critical way. So the most important thing of literature review is how to present your ideas in a critical way. So that criticality makes you a researcher. It's not about listing what people have done. It's about synthesizing different arguments and bringing it adequately to make a case. So if you're looking at literature review, just look at it as you are trying to make a case in a court of law. You're trying to make a case to somebody that doesn't know about your research. You're trying to inform your reader. So how do you inform your reader? You are telling a story. To tell a story, you are trying to say, oh, this is what I'm doing, this is how it has been done, and this is how I want to solve a problem. And we should not forget that when you're doing a research, you're trying to solve a problem. So you're not trying to do a research that has been done by someone else before. You're trying to solve a problem you're trying to solve a problem, you're trying to fill a gap, and you're trying to contribute meaningful to the society. That's what makes novelty, that's what makes originality of your work. So this presentation or seminar has been um, scheduled for 2 hours. I'm not a good talkative. I don't know how to talk for 2 hours. I could manage to talk for 1 hour, 30 minutes, but I would love it to be very engaging. You can ask me questions, different type of questions related to this, not related to this, because literature review is central to everything you're going to do to your research. Your literature review is linked to your introduction, is linked to your background, is linked to your research context, is also linked to your philosophy, is linked to your research methods and your contribution. So if a literature review is not being synthesized, is not making sense, everything about your research is flawed, is weak. So there is nothing for you to make a case on. So we're going to start with the learning outcome. So the learning outcome for today's meeting is going to be understanding different types of literature review. So at the end of today, you should be able to know the different types of literature review, the examples, how to use it. And when you see a paper, you'll be able to know this is the type of literature review, and this is another type of literature review. You also be able to understand the differences between conceptual framework, theoretical framework, and empirical framework, and how to develop it, when to use it, and examples of it. You also understand different types of citations, and references. When I came to the UK, I didn't understand how to use citation and references because in Nigeria, it's not something that is common. Yes, we do it in our thesis after our final year, but it's not something that is really demanding. But here in the UK, for every assignment, your citation, your references takes a point. So you have to know how to cite adequately and reference properly. And I love the fact that someone mentioned about how to use citation. So when I came to the UK, I used to use citation manually, but someone taught me how to use it with a software. And when I started using it with a software, it made my life so easy. Citing, using reference, it was so easy if you know how to use adequate software. Organizing references. So traditionally, I used to just use my references on my laptop. I just take my references, create a file, and that's it. But when I started doing my PhD, I realized that it is not adequate enough for you to just put your references in your laptop, because anything could happen. your laptop could crash, something else could happen. But when you have a reference manager, your references are stored in a cloud, which helps you in terms of recovery. It helps you to organize. And this is really adequate for a researcher, because if you have reference management software, you'll be able to transfer skills as in other things, and it shows you as it shows good practice, and it shows you that you're a good researcher and you know what you're doing. So at the end of all this, you should be able to produce coherent literature review suitable for academic publication. So I'll tell you the best way to publish fast. The best way to publish fast, you can be in Nigeria and still do a literature review, which could be published without you looking for primary data or secondary data, as long as it follows quality and research rigor. Like it's rigor, it's quality enough, it's good enough, it shows sentences, it shows the quality of your approach. You can publish in any top journals. So we'll start with, what is a literature review? What do we mean by literature review? A literature review, like I've written here, is a critical examination. I want you to understand the word critical. Critical is the key. When you're saying critical, you're not saying, oh, Chidima and Stanley did this. Okay, Precious and Eberechukwu did this. No, that's not critical. You're just listing what's what an article has done. What's critical means is Sandra and Chidima did this. However, Stanley and Precious did this. This reflects that. So it engaged the researcher that, oh, this is what has been found in the research. Oh, this is what this person is saying, and this is how this person is reflecting upon the statement, and this is how she's trying to imply it into her research. So you need to understand how to synthesize existing literature review. When you're talking about literature review, it's about synthesis, it's about critical examination, analyzing, comparing, evaluating previous studies. Every studies related to your research can be okay for your research, but can be still be out of scope. You need to know what is in scope and out of scope. So in scope is what is related to your research, what is relevant to your research. Out of scope is, yes, this is good, but it's not part of my research. It is interesting, but it is not part of my research. So you need to understand that in scope. So when you understand your in scope, you'll be able to give a good story about your literature review. You'll be able to understand what I need to do, what keywords I need to put on Google Scholar, what keywords I need to put on Web of Science to be able to give me my answer. So, and also when we talk about synthesis, when you review different papers that are saying the same thing, you don't need to list it. You need to just if, let me say, Sandra et al. Said this, Coulter et al. Said this, let's say Stanley et al. Said this, Precious et al., they're saying the same thing. Make sure that all what they are saying, you match everything together, you synthesize everything together, let it make sense. Then when you write it, then you parasynthesize it. You just put those people in your citations in the middle of your work. You just put the citations. So you don't need to put different people that are saying the same thing. That is not literature review. We don't need to repeat words. You don't need to duplicate words for the reader. You need to engage. I know I've repeated engage a lot of times because that's what literature review does. It needs to engage the reader. It needs to inform the reader of the background of your work, what has been done, what has not been done, and how do you want to solve the problem. You cannot solve every problem, but what is the major problem you want to solve? How do you want to arrive to this place? So I did a template of what is a literature review and what is not a literature review. A literature review is a critical analysis, while a literature review is not a collection of article summary. Like I said, you don't need to summarize. You don't need to go to your abstracts and say, oh, this is what has been done. Let me take what is in the abstract and put it in the literature review. That is not what we're looking for. We are looking for how informed do you know this literature? How informed do you know this literature? If I say, oh, talk about Nigeria, what is the literature? What is the background study that has been done in Nigeria that you know? That is critical analysis. Synthesis of ideas from multiple sources, like I've said, like I've explained. You don't need to put different people saying the same thing in different paragraphs. That is not an expert work. You're not describing a list. You are critically analyzing and putting your thoughts together. So when you're doing this, you need to be aware of plagiarism. So you're not putting people's work and putting it to your literature review. You're putting people's word and restating their words in your own meaning. But your meaning must mean the same thing they are saying. It's not like, oh, you're just feeling based on your presumption, or you are speculating that this is what it means. Yes, there's room for reflection, but you need to analyze, okay, this is what these people are saying, make it make sense to you, and write it in a way that when they take your paper and they take their paper, they'll say, oh, this is what they actually did. So you're not just putting their work and putting it there. And if you don't cite their work, you are paraphrasing, you are plagiarizing their work. That means you're claiming that it's yours while it is not yours. Also, literature review helps you to identify patterns. It makes you sit in the middle of debates, especially when your work is something about, your work is very sensitive. Your work sits across a debate. So like now, my research sits across a very critical debate in the UK. I'm doing about older tourism. Different people talks about older adults in different ways. So what is the main debate and how do you want to speak about older adults? It's from your literature review that you'll be able to take the debate and where your standpoint is. So if you don't know how to pick the debates or how to create a debate from literature review, so when I mean how to create a debate, the best way to create a debate is looking at comparing and contrasting. What did this person say about this particular concept? What did this person say about this particular concept? Why are they disagreeing? Why are they agreeing? Who are those agreeing? Who are those disagreeing? Why? The word is why, not what. We don't want to know the what. Why? How? What happens? Like the what is not just saying, oh, this is it. You need to understand how to use your WH and your H. You need to have it at the back of your mind. Sometimes it's good to, when you're doing your literature review, to have a mapping. So we call it a wedding map in research. So when you're trying to do a wedding, how do you do a wedding? You know what you start with the relevant things you want to do in your wedding. You talk, if it's the bride, you want to know the gown the bride is wearing. You want to know the groom, the person the groom, the clothes the groom is wearing. If you want to invite people, you want to know the people that you want to invite and people that you don't want to invite. That is how literature review is an engagement, a critical engagement. So it also provides justification for new research. So like I said, it's not a copy and paste review. You need to, if you have a research context, especially when you're exploring new ideas. I am doing something, I'm exploring a new idea in my research. And it's difficult to just take people's work because sometimes research can be so fragmented. When I mean research can be so fragmented, is that the research has not been explored before. When you have such a case, you just have to narratively pick ideas from different contexts to form your literature review. But when you have a research that has been widely researched, you have to make a case why your research is important. Why are you filling a gap? How sure are you that you are filling a gap that has not been filled before? So you have to make an adequate, good justification of your work. So Why is it important for us to do a literature review? It provides an understanding. It provides an overview of existing knowledge. It helps researchers to become familiar with your current state of research on a particular topic. It makes you an expert of your topic. It gives you a background knowledge. It makes you engaged with your research. It helps you to know the key authors of your research. Sometimes we just read papers and we don't know why is this author so concerned about this. We don't know the key authors in the area of the research that we're doing. And that is a bad practice of engaging with literature, because the best way to engage with the literature is to understand your key authors. And when you understand your key authors, you'll be able to snowball. What I mean snowball is you look at their papers and you go down to their reference list. Then you look for their papers and you start searching, okay, how does this relate to this paper? Why did this person reference this paper? How can I use this paper? So with that, you are widely informed that, oh, this is the debate in this research, this is the background in this research, this is what has been done about the research. It's not just reading the paper. The references in your paper are important. The references can lead you to another research paper, and that's the best way to do it. It's the best way to read. The best way to read. It's prevent duplicates of research. Like I said, if you're doing a research that is more very, very, very comprehensive, very, very comprehensive, that a lot of people are doing, you need to understand, why is your research important? Why do you think, okay, if you're trying to put in for a proposal, the question they will ask you is, why do you think we should fund this paper? Why do you think we should fund this proposal? So if you're doing your literature review or your research, that thing should be in your memory, that why is this important? What gap am I feeling? What is the contribution? With that, you won't be able to duplicate people's work. It helps you to generate new ideas. So it gives you, it inspires new perspective. It gives you concepts and approaches. So when you're reading a literature review, I'm more of a visual person. So I love writing. Some people like to draw tables. Some people like to write, list things. You need to know what works for you. So I used to map up my ideas. Okay, I've read this in this paper. I've read this in this paper. I've read this in this paper. What is new? How can I be in this paper? So it's not about you publishing. It's about what is the best way to publish, and is going to make people engaged in your work. Some people have published papers and no citation from 2020, 2008, no citation. So what is the relevance of you publishing your paper? Citation is important. Your thesis is important if you argue your thesis or your research or your assessment properly. So it helps you to generate that new research ideas. It identifies gaps and weakness. So every paper, you're going to see a limitation. So sometimes your research gap is not always written in black and white and say, oh, this is the research gap. No. A good article won't state that. But a good article will tell you the limitations of the paper. It will also signpost you in the literature review of the research gap. Even from the introduction, it will signpost you that, oh, this is the existing literature review. This is where they are trying to fill. And when you get to the literature review, they will state it, and you will realize that they don't actually fill all those gaps they mention in the literature review. Then they go to the limitation to tell you the limitation of their study. So the limitation of their study is the gap. Sometimes is the gap. You can generate your gap from the limitation of the study. So the limitation of the study is not there to be a decoration. No, it's there for other people to be able to do the research. So some use limitation of the study, some use future research. So another purpose of literature review also is support the development of a research problem. It's almost the same thing that I've been saying. When you know the background of your study, you know how to put your brain together, like put your thoughts together and say, oh, this is a research problem. So you cannot fill in everything and you say, this is how I am going to support this. So, and it helps you to strengthen the theoretical and conceptual framework. So sometimes when you read papers, sometimes the papers are not always something that you're doing actually, like it's not in your discipline area. So some subjects are very interdisciplinary, that they borrow a lot of things from different people, like tourism, marketing, business. We borrow a lot from sociology, we borrow a lot from psychology. Sometimes we borrow from medicine because we are part of social science. So when you read a paper that is close to sociology, you'll be able to understand how their theories have been used. So you're reading a paper that is related to your research topics, because your research topics that informs your literature review. So your research topic does not inform the subject that you are doing, it informs your literature review. So your literature review informs your research problem informs your research objective and your research aims. So if you don't know the research topic, so if you don't have your research topic, how do you want to get your literature review? Because it's from your research topic, you'll be able to get the keywords to use for your literature review. And from your literature review, you understand the research problems. And when you understand the research problems, you understand the aim of your study. And from your aim of your study, you create objectives based on your gaps. Do you understand? So for literature review, we have different contexts of literature review. We have a standalone study. So a standalone study is most of the things we use to publish papers. So a standalone study could be a systematic literature review of a particular concept. It could be a narrative review of a particular concept. So all you do is just to talk about the literature. You synthesize different literature, you give an introduction, tell us a background story as someone who is not part of your work. I want you to understand that literature review is informing somebody that does not know anything about your work. So you need to, in as much as you're doing your literature review, you need to know how to use sentences in a very simple language that somebody will understand. There is no accolation for jargons. When you're saying something and somebody does not understand what you're saying, you're not articulate enough, it becomes jargons. But when when it's simple, you'll be able to find synthesis and you'll be able to review paper. So standalone study is mostly used to publish papers. You just do it and you publish it. It's just about the literature review, about your research and maybe a particular research that you're doing, and you publish it. A preliminary stage of type of literature review, context of literature review, is the one that you do first. So there's some research that the first thing you have to do first is to do a preliminary stage. And this is more like a research that is widely used, that has various a lot of people are using it, that is an ongoing debate. So that's the preliminary stage. You need to know what has been done first. So these are the people that they chase their papers. They don't want their papers to be published on time. So you have to do that preliminary stage. You need to understand what is the gap. How do you want to justify this gap? So that's the preliminary stage. The final research report is the one that relates to you've gotten, this one has to do with the research findings of previous studies and how it contributes to your knowledge. So if this is more like you're doing an exploratory research, so you just have to look at related research findings. So exploratory research is a research that has not been fully explored in a particular concept, or is an underexplored area, a limited area that it's very relevant to the society, but it has not been explored. So you look at what has been done in different contexts. you bring those studies together and you demonstrate the study's contribution to knowledge. How is this relevant? So you doing an exploratory research, doing a research that is well known, doing a descriptive, explanatory, doesn't mean you don't have to have a contribution. You have to have a contribution, but you need to also understand what has been done, the existing study. So for more information, I'm going to share my slide. You can use this slide to get more meaning of the context of literature and how to identify it, doing a literature review, and it's from political science and politics. So it's a good paper. That's why I put the link in here. So steps in conducting a good research. So if you want to start, if I get a paper now and I want to start conducting a good research, I need to understand what is the existing study. You need to ask yourself, what have previous researchers investigated before? Findings. What did they discover? What do these findings tell us? Are there any contradictions or limitations? You need to interpret that in your own meaning. But if it is something that you can't interpret in your own meaning, that you need to put their own sentence or their own word, you need to quote it. You need to quote it, and you need to also, when you're quoting such kind of words, you need to not engage with it. So when I mean you engage with it, you ensure that you understand the quotes, you explain what it means to you, what it means to the research, and you now look at the comparing and contrasting words you can relate together to make a good case if you're trying to do that. So it helps you to be able to, it moves you to the research gap, and it gives you how to justify your own research problems. So when you are conducting a good literature review, you need to also get the research gap. The research gap is not something easy. It is not something you just get a paper and say, this is the research gap. How sure are you that it has not been done in another paper? We have 1 million and thousands researching about a different concept every time, every year. How sure are you that your research is novel? How sure are you it has not been replicated? So if it has not been, the only way that you can know that it has not been replicated is if you engage so much with your papers, if you engage so much with your research. So my supervisor used to say something, if you want to know a good research, print the research paper, hold it, feel it, read it word for word. It is not something you need to read on the screen. Read it to be able to understand that you understand what they are trying to say. Most especially if English is a second language or first language. If English is a second language, you need to understand what are these people saying, because the way people write, the way an American person writes a literature review is different from the way a UK researcher writes. American researchers write in short sentences. A UK researchers write in long sentences. So you need to understand what is this person saying? Why is there a bridge? How do I understand the criticality of this person's paper? So it is and also learn how to use others connecting words like however, nevertheless, more so. It makes your literature review interesting for people to engage. But words like this is, or that is, it's really boring, and it makes it very descriptive. So the last step is your study. You've identified the gap. You know the existing study. You know the findings. You've interpreted it. So how do you want to sell your study to your reader to tell them that what you're doing is really important? That is how you're going to write it in sentences that they can understand. And this is through your justification of your research gap. free. So this is a flow chart to help you create a literature review. Like, you need to understand your research topic, you need to review. So if you want to conduct your write a literature review now, you just need to understand your research topic. Like I've said before, you need to review the existing literature, then identify the knowledge gap. After identifying the knowledge gap, you formulate your own research problems, you develop your research questions, and you create a research context that explains your research questions. So I think I've explained most of this, but I'm going to dwell more on developing research questions, objective, and creating a research context. So developing a research question and objective, if you see it, it is coming before understanding your existing literature. So your research question is not coming immediately after your research topic, because you don't know what you're trying to answer. So your research questions cannot come immediately after your research topic. It has to come about after you have known the existing literature. The only way you can have a research topic and a research question following each other immediately is if you're trying to work on a proposal that have been proposed by someone and they have done the background study and they're already giving you a topic and a research question. So you just need to just get involved with it. So creating a research context that explains your research question is giving someone a story about what you're trying to do. So let me say my research, I'm doing something on older tourists. A lot of people have done something on older tourists. So why should they matter? Why should my own idea matter? That's my research context. So I could say this study is trying to focus on older tourists between 60 and above. Why is this important for this study? But based on existing study, they have done this, they have done that. But this is limited the way they define older tourists or the way they define older adults. In this particular context, they have not looked at it from a domestic side, more of international side. So why am I focusing on local? Why am I not focusing on international? What is my contribution? Why must it be local? Why must it not be international? This is because you want to create an inclusive, more socialized interaction. Why they age actively in the local society. So more socialization, more well-being. So I'm giving a context, an idea of what I'm trying to do. So literature review is what people have done. Your research context is what you're trying to do. So, importance of literature review. It helps with contextualization. So if you don't have an idea of the existing study, how do you want to create your own idea for people to do? How do you sell out your own ideas for people to understand? How do you justify your research problem? How do you justify your research questions and say it is timely, it's novel, it is important? How do you create a contribution if you didn't do an adequate literature review? How can you identify the gaps? You can't identify the gaps if you don't know your literature review, if you have not done a good literature review. You cannot understand your study. It's impossible to understand your study if you've not gone through a rigorous literature review. You've not looked at the literature, you've not understand it, you've not synthesized it, you don't know what it means, you cannot even interpret it, you cannot have an understanding of it. When I mean understanding, we are talking about deep understanding of your literature. You're understanding what has been done, how it has been done, and how you can do it better. So we're talking about credibility. How credible is your research? How credible is your literature review? What site are you getting your literature review from? Are you just giving us blogs? So you need to So importance of doing a literature review makes you engage. That's why I mentioned about the snowballing. Snowballing is really good. If you try it, you will know that that's the best way to get the paper. Especially when you're doing a paper, that just look at papers that has, maybe you've read 3 papers, go to their references, check it. You will see something that leads you to another paper. When you read that paper and you think that paper is relevant for your study, go to their references again. It will take you to another paper. And that's a good way of doing it. It helps you to interpret their ideas. It allows you to be in sync with the journal authors. It allows you to be in sync with the authors and know, like, oh, this is what they are thinking. So when you read a paper 1, 2, 3 times, you understand. When you close your eyes and you wake up, you'll be able to understand what they are trying to say. So I want you to understand, like, the first time you read a paper, it might not make sense because of how they write. I struggle with that. So what I do most of the time is I take my literature review, I read it like a story, and I close my laptop. If I want to read a very complex idea, I close my laptop, then I print it out, then I start reading, then I start annotating. So some people do something, they just annotate their ideas, but they don't write what it means to them. So if you're just annotating your ideas, the paper, and you're not answering yourself, look, what is this author trying to say here? What is this author trying to say here? You're not engaging with the paper, and you cannot form an idea from that paper. So you need to make sure that when you read the paper, you need to relate that paper to your ideas, your research question, your research aim, your research context. You need to go back again, what it means to you, reflect on it, breathe on it, eat on it, make it make sense to you in various ways. Look at it, try different things in your head, in your memory. So it helps. It shows you directions. It gives you direction. A good literature review directs you to the methodology to use. It tells you if you need to do a quantitative research. It tells you if you need to do a qualitative research. So your research topic tells you, oh, this is the topic, this is the research method you're trying to do. Your research topic tells you that, oh, if you're trying to look at the comparison of 2 states, you know you're doing a quantitative research. But if you're trying to do like an exploratory of Nigeria government, okay, let's say you're trying to do an exploration of localization in Nigeria. You're exploring, you're not trying to test something. So in that kind of part, you know what has been done. When you read the literature, you know that, oh, they've done this through a quantitative perspective, through a qualitative perspective. Okay, through a quantitative perspective, what is the new idea I can use to approach this methodology in a good way? Instead of me doing the normal quantitative analysis, I can do maybe a regression analysis, a multiple regression analysis. Okay, what if I introduce a panel data of large numbers? Maybe it would help. So it gives you that direction. But I'm a qualitative researcher, so I'm more of doing interviews and everything. For a qualitative researcher, a literature review informs us and guides us. But for a quantitative researcher, your literature review helps you to understand the context and helps you to test your ideas. So if you don't have the background of your literature review, so what are you testing? There's nothing for you to test, because you need to test it to be able to give a generalized information. Why a qualitative researcher gives an information that is not generalized but can be transferred. So which leads to your originality. So your originality could be based on your existing synthesis or based on existing knowledge of the literature. You could get originality from the methods, you could get originality from the context, you could get originality from maybe the population. You could get originality from interventions that they've used, or maybe they used it in this particular context. Maybe they used it as they looked at localization of Nigeria. You could say, oh, what about we look at the internalization, maybe global global branding in Nigeria, our global market our global market trying to advertise their branding. How does it influence content creators? You know, it gives you ideas, and you write your ideas down, and you'd be able to connect your points together. So, types of literature review, like I've explained before, we have different types of literature review. We've got the narrative review, we've got the rapid review, we've got the scoping review, we've got the umbrella review, we've got the systematic literature review, I've got the meta-analysis. But the common ones that you would see on papers are more of narrative literature review, systematic literature review, scoping review, and meta-analysis. These are the four key literature review you would see. Rapid review, umbrella review is used, but most of the times is when you talk about umbrella review, it's more like you're trying to integrate different types of literature review together to make sense. And right now, that is what is on trend now. That is what most authors, most journal editors are looking for because of rigor. So when you do, because people are doing systematic literature review and just say, oh, this is what the paper is saying, but they're not telling us what is new. They're not telling us how does this make sense. They're not telling us what is the key findings and how do your literature review, how do you looking for these papers, how do you conducting this literature review add to the body of knowledge. So when you do an umbrella review, which is also known as an integrative review, it gives us that full idea of what you're trying to say. So you're integrating different contexts. So you're using different things to improve the quality of your data and to the relevance of your data to be able to sell your case to the journal articles. But for a normal thesis, you don't need an umbrella review. It's not relevant. So narrative review, this is mostly done by qualitative researchers because we have different philosophies. So I'm sorry that I'm going to bring this here. It's going to be very confusing, but there's no you want to talk about literature review without your philosophy standpoint. So when you're doing a narrative review, we've got different philosophical standpoints. We've got the interpretivist standpoints, which are very subjective, and we've got the positivists, which are objective. So when you're on a positivist standpoint, you tend to be a quantitative researcher. But when you're interpretivist, constructivist, you tend to be a qualitative researcher. So a qualitative researcher believes that there is no one way to life. Sorry. There is no one way to life. There are multiple realities. So there are different realities. So we don't believe in one truth. But a positive researcher believes that there is one truth, that there is only one way of doing things. So this brings me back to a narrative review. So narrative review, they just summarize and interpret existing literature review. So they gather different papers from different sources, from different everywhere. They just gather papers together. So they don't follow a methodological methodological guidelines because they believe that they are very subjective and any factors could influence their ideas, their thinking. So the best way to use this kind of review is if you are providing a background or you're exploring a new topic. So like I said, like I explained the other time, when you're exploring a new topic, you want to know what has been done in different areas regarding to something related to that topic. So it can be so fragmented that your ideas can be fragmented, that you can pick your idea from maybe business, you can pick your ideas from marketing, or they have looked at, let's say, emotions. They have looked at emotions in a different context. They have looked at emotion in younger tourism or in family tourism, and you're trying to bring emotion to older tourism. So you look at that paper and understand how is emotions being used. Then from there, you look at another context again. You'll be like, oh, what are the dimensions of emotions? So how dimension of emotions been used in other tourism before? How have it been used? Okay, what is the existing thing that they've been using in older tourism? So you see, it's narrative. It's like you are telling a story. You are telling a story with no adequate guidelines for it. So it is flexible and it is comprehensive. It is flexible and it is comprehensive. And the limitation of this is it has high risk of auto bias. So because I said that this kind of paper is more of an interpretive standpoint, interpretivists believe that there is bias in research. So they believe on that bias, and that is why there's always like a reflexive note saying on how they engaged on a particular review. So if you do a narrative review and you put a reflection of how you engage with your papers or your research, it tells the reader that, oh, this person acknowledged the bias of this study, and this is how the person reflected on this bias. So rapid review is more to produce evidence quickly. So it's something that you just do in a very short time frame. You just use it as quick as possible, very fast and very practical. It's something you just go to Google Scholar, you get your papers, and that's it. So when you do a rapid review, you just look at keywords in your research topics, relevant keywords in your research topics. And if the keywords are not relating exactly to that topic, you drop it down. And this helps you to overlook relevant studies. Scoping review. This is another type of qualitative research, but it is when you're trying to do broad topic or emerging research areas. So emerging research areas is different from exploring new topic. Emerging research areas is something that, it is new, but people are already on this topic. People are already pushing papers. So those kind of topic, you see that in 2026, you're seeing like 100 people saying the same thing about this particular topic. So it's good to do a scoping review because it helps you to map the breadth of available evidence. It helps you to identify knowledge gap across different ideas. But one thing about this scoping review is that it does not usually assess study quality. So there is no study quality to be able to understand this particular paper. So, there is no rigor. You cannot, how would I put the word in a simple English is, it just does it in a very adequate way, but it doesn't give the rigor. It doesn't have like Prisma protocol that tells you the inclusion, exclusion criteria. It's more like you're telling a story, but there's no inclusion or exclusion criteria because you're trying to just identify the gap. So you're not telling us what is the knowledge. You're not giving us a summary of what is new. You're just trying to identify that this is the gap and this is where the future direction should be. So umbrella review, this one I was talking about was, it helps to synthesize findings from multiple systematic review, narrative review, scoping review. It's a combination of two different types of review. And how to use this is when you're trying to do a high level overview evidence that is required. And this is best used in journal articles. When you do an umbrella review in article, I don't know what article wants to reject your paper because they've seen the rigor, they've seen how you've engaged with the paper, and they've seen your finding, and they've seen your knowledge. They've seen your contribution, and which is important. It provides a comprehensive summary. However, it's limited by the quality of included reviews. So because you're trying to do two different reviews, you have lots of papers And it now boils down to what should I include, what should I exclude? And there might be bias in what you're doing. What is the quality of the paper that you're reviewing? How is this paper important to this research? So we've got another one, which is the systematic review, which is mostly done by quantitative researchers. It also answers a focused research question using a rigorous methodology. This is where you use a PRISMA protocol. The PRISMA protocol shows how you've engaged with your search engines, your database. What is the inclusion? What is the exclusion? It shows the step-by-step process of how you were able to get your data, so that when another person picks your paper, they can replicate that data and get a new and replicate that research. So it helps to provide high quality evidence. It minimizes bias and it's highly reliable, but it is time intensive, very time intensive. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to review 2,000 papers, 400 papers, it takes a lot of times. Meta-analysis also is part of a quantitative study. This helps us to statistically combine results from quantitative studies. So this one is not just reviewing papers, it's just helping you to look at what are the findings of different reviews, and you get the findings and you combine it together. When you combine it together, you compare the data together to be able to understand what they are trying to say. So what is the strength of meta-analysis? It increases statistical powers. It helps you to be able to, it helps to increase precision. It helps to generalize that information, and you say, oh, based on all these findings, this is the idea, or this is what I'm trying to pass out. But the limitation is it's more from an homogeneous studies. An homogeneous study is like you're looking at it from one perspective instead of two different perspectives. So you're only looking at it from one perspective. So if you're looking at something, you're just like looking for the strength alone without looking at the weaknesses. So you're just focusing on the strength, and which could be a limitation to how you interpret your findings. So instead of me talking about different types of literature review, I would focus on systematic literature review because it is more important and it is an easy to do study which you could publish within 3 months if you're doing the right thing. And I'll also share a video which you could watch for 3 minutes for you to be able to understand everything I've been saying with literature review. So to do a systematic literature review, you need to understand your research question using the framework PICO. So you can either do PIC or PICO. PICO is population. What is the population of your study? The intervention. What is the intervention? Are you looking at the antecedents, consequences, factors? What is the comparison? Are you trying to compare between Abuja and Lagos? Or what are you trying to do? The population, are you looking at younger adults, older adults? The outcome, what places are you looking at? Like sometimes people use outcome, sometimes people use context. So if I'm saying what factors influences food tourism in older adults, or there's a food tourism in hospitality. So my intervention is my factor. My population is the hospitality industry. I don't have a comparison because I have a context, which is the food tourism. So it depends on what you're trying to look for. That's when you use a particular framework. You could use PIC, which is population, intervention, and context. So followed by developing a review protocol. So when you've gotten your research question, you need to be able to review your protocol through different search engines and search strategies, which includes the inclusion and exclusion criteria using relevant database such as Scopus, PubMed, Web of Science, which I'll show you in a bit after the video. So we have what are the screening and selecting of studies, assess quality of evidence, and extract relevant data and report findings. So I'm going to show you guys, but I'm not going to show you now because I know that they're recording this, and most of the things I'm going to show you, it's more of my work, and I don't want it to be part of the recording. So after this, I would show you guys, but you can watch the YouTube video.
Sandra, I think you might need to
Yeah.
your video is playing, but it's not playing audio.
Oh.
Audio is not coming out. So I think you might, the way you can do it is you might need to share, like stop sharing, and then when you are sharing, share with audio. Like you see by the side when you want to share, say share with audio, so that your voice, so that this thing can play out. The audio of the video can play.
Share sound. Okay.
That can help make it easier.
Yeah.
First and foremost, research can be either
Sandra, yes.
You can start
audio. Oh no, yes.
Yeah, the audio is playing now, so you can start
primary or secondary.
You can also put
primary
your
research
YouTube on full screen.
Sorry?
Yeah, can you hear me? I said you can put the YouTube on full screen. This arrow stuff, click on it so it shows on full screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Generally involves gathering data directly from research subjects and requires ethical approval. Secondary research.
Where the video started.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Conducting research can be daunting. There are a few distinctions that can help make it easier. First and foremost, research can be either primary or secondary. Primary research generally involves gathering data directly from research subjects and requires ethical approval. Secondary research involves gathering data that already exists. Because secondary research does not include talking directly with human subjects or generating new data, it does not need ethical approval. In secondary research, you use findings of other researchers and authors. A systematic literature review is one of many research methodologies that can be used to conduct secondary research. A systematic literature review is different than a literature review. A literature review provides a high-level summary of the literature in the fields connected to your proposed topic of research. It is a general synthesis of what has been done in the research area, by whom, highlights what past research tells us about the topic, and identifies gaps and tensions in the field. A systematic literature review begins with an intentional and purposeful selection of data that will be included in the research study. This includes identifying types of information that will be included in the review, such as policy documents, journal articles, book chapters, blogs, and so on. Criteria used to ensure inclusion of potential pieces of work, such as the scope of the review, types of data to be included, and search terms for identifying types of information, and any other specifications, such as language of the information. Once you have identified the works that will be analyzed, you need to do a deep and thorough read to extract key information and themes from each piece. A coding guide will help you discern which pieces of work you will use in your systematic literature review. Be sure to note why you have excluded a piece and how the ones you have included meet the selection criteria. In the analysis phase, categorizing your findings and looking for commonalities and areas of difference is useful. When you report on your findings, you want to identify what themes emerged. The final step of a systematic literature review is to interpret your findings and bring them back to your research question. What do they tell us about this topic? Are there gaps in the research? Are there contradictions in your findings? How do these findings inform a response to your research question? What recommendations can you offer? Is there a need for further research? Were there best practices identified that you can highlight? The reader should be able to understand what you did, how you did it, and the sense that you made of the findings as they relate to the research question you were investigating.
Menopausal belly isn't about trying.
Sorry. Yeah. So with that video, you should be able to understand what I've been explaining for a while now, and you should be able to have like a full knowledge before we move to the next one, which is building a research framework, building a framework. So before you understand what a framework is, you've understood what a literature review is. So a research framework is a structure that guides a research study by explaining the key concepts, theories, relationship, and evidence that supports the investigation. So after you've done your literature review, the next thing you need to do is building a framework. So most of the time, people tend not to actually do this, but it's a good practice for you to be able to have a good framework, a conceptual framework. So the conceptual framework leads your ideas and tells your supervisor or the reader that, oh, this is what I'm trying to do. And this is how it links to existing study. And this is where the research gaps is. And this is how the gaps would lead to a future research. So a research framework helps to understand the research problems. It explains the relationship between different variables. It connects the study with existing knowledge. It guides the data collection. It helps you, it directs you to how to get your data and what analysis you need to do. And it demonstrates the contribution you're trying to do. So we have different types of research framework. We have the theoretical research framework. The theoretical research framework is based on an established theory or theories that explains the relationship among concepts and provide a foundation for understanding the research problem. So the theoretical framework is more of existing theory. What has existing theory done about a particular research? Maybe you're trying to look at a theory and what the theory has done. The best way to engage with theories is if you bring the diagram of that theory and you use the diagram to tell a story of how this diagram would be used. So in theoretical framework, you can use theories in different ways. You can use that as synthesizing concept. What I mean synthesizing concept is it guides your study and it allows new things to emerge. That is more of a qualitative researcher thing. Then we have an analytical framework. Analytical framework, it helps your analysis. This is the basics of your analysis. So you could say, this is this theory, you're trying to test a particular theory. And through your theoretical framework, you can be able to understand what type of approach to theory are you trying to use. Are you trying to use deductive, inductive, or abductive? So are you trying to say, oh, I'm trying to test this study? Or are you trying to say, oh, I'm trying to use this study to be able to, I don't have a theory, I'm just trying to engage with the literature. So from my data, I'll be able to get the theory to use. Or I have a theory, but this theory will not be used as part of my work, but it will guide me. So the easiest way to understand it is the sentences. Am I using this to just understand the concept of my work? Or analytical, am I using it to analyze my work? That means, am I trying to use this theory to analyze my work? And when you read some papers, you see them using those kind of theory. They say, oh, if you read some qualitative papers, you see them say, test using social emotional selective theory or using stimulus organism theory. So they're trying to tell you that this theory is the basics of my work. I'm using this theory to explore this research. I'm using this theory to understand this concept. Why, for a quantitative researcher, they can use the theoretical framework just to test a particular framework. And the purpose is it provides the theoretical foundation of the study. It explains why certain relationships exist. It guides the development of research questions or hypotheses. or helps to interpret research finding. Like now, we have technology acceptance model. Technology acceptance model is a type of theory used for social media marketing. It could be used for technology adoption. It could be used to understand why people use social media or anything that has to do with technology. It has to do with behavior, maybe purchase intention, plan, anything that has to do with behavior. We use this type of theory. So if you're trying to understand a particular concept around this, you're trying to test it, that is when you use this type of theory. I'm not saying that you should use it now, but I'm just showing you a diagram that this theory it's not a theory, it's not a framework or a diagram I did myself. It's not a diagram I did myself. It's a diagram that was generated from an author's work that needed to have a citation. So now I purposely did this here by putting this diagram with no citation. This shows a bad practice because it shows that I am claiming that this belongs to me while it's not mine. This is not my work. So why am I not citing it? So whenever you have a diagram that it is not yours, it requires a citation. Conceptual framework. Your conceptual framework is a research-developed model that illustrates the key concepts, variables, and expected relationship within a study. So your conceptual framework is something that you develop by yourself. It's something that's based on your different reading, your research question, your research aim. You think that you can extend the theory by creating your own conceptual framework to be able to understand the theoretical framework that you intend to use. So what's the purpose of it? It defines the main concept being investigated. It shows the relationship between independent variable and dependent variable or different variables. It provides direction for data collection and it helps to organize the research design. So now, if we're trying to look at what variables or concepts will my study examine, if you're trying to ask yourself that question, you need to ask yourself that question while trying to create a conceptual framework. What are the variables? What are the concepts is my study trying to examine, or is my study trying to explore? So now, an example is factors influencing technology adoption among young children. If you look at the previous one, you see passive usefulness, passive ease of use, intention, and behavior. So if you look at this one now, you see passive usefulness, digital skill, passive use, social influence, technology adoption. This could be the concept of variables that I'm trying to look for. And I'm using that variable to create my own conceptual framework and say, oh, if they can use this, if this is very useful to them, they'll quickly adopt technology. If they have the right skill, they could quickly adopt technology. If it is easy to use, they can actually adopt technology. Then it shows the behavior that we are talking about here. This is the behavior. That social influence can actually affect technology. So conceptual framework is a one-man mopo thing. It's your idea, but you're trying to make a case with your idea to present it to people that understand it. So you're not trying to do a very complicated conceptual framework for people to understand. It's just something that people need to read and, okay, this makes sense to them as it makes sense to you. Something very simple. Then we have empirical framework. Empirical framework is developed from findings of previous studies. It summarizes existing evidence, research methods, and conclusions related to the research questions. It shows what previous researchers have discovered. It identifies patterns and contradictions. It highlights limitations in existing studies, and it helps to identify gaps. An example is maybe in previous studies, Smith 2020 found technology usefulness predicts adoption. Mind you, the citations are wrong. It's just an example. Technology usefulness predicts adoption, limited. So maybe the findings they got was limited to developed countries. The findings you saw that it was limited to developed countries. That means they didn't talk about developed countries. You can talk about digital skill influence adoptions, and you might say, oh, Ahmed looked at this, but maybe they used a small sample size. You're giving us an overview of the limitation, the findings, that means their own key contribution and your own research gap. You can say Chen talked about social influence affects adoption, but few studies in universities have not actually found this. So you're looking at the gap. So what does this gap mean to you, and how does this gap informs your study? So my reason for putting this here is when you look at empirical framework and literature review, you feel like, oh, they mean the same thing, but it's not the same thing. A literature review gives you the critical review and synthesis of existing studies on a research topic, while an empirical framework gives you findings of empirical studies that shows evidence, relationship, and pattern relevant to the current study. So it shows like the empirical study. So it could be like different systematic literature review, and you're showing the evidence or the key concept of a particular study, like the key concept of a particular study, and you look at the evidence, the relationship and pattern, and you're trying to arrange it on a tabular form or in a visual manner for someone to be able to understand how your ideas are linking to each other. So the main purpose of this is to explain what is already known, identify debates, and review research gaps. This is just to show you what previous studies have found and how their findings inform the current research. This is for a literature review, it's more of a broad understanding of theories, concepts, methods, and arguments, while empirical framework is more specific and evidence from previous studies and their findings. Main questions you need to answer when you're trying to do a literature review is what is known about this topic. But for empirical framework, is what evidence exists and what do previous studies show. So, you're trying to see what is the evidence that exists and what do previous studies show. And you're trying to bring a visual representation of this existing thing. So between literature and empirical framework, some people use it interchangeably. Some say literature review is also known as like empirical literature review. You're doing an empirical literature review. Why some says that it's two different things. But the only difference that makes empirical framework and literature review a bit different is the specificity of empirical framework. Literature review can be broad. You can dive in different things. In your literature review, you can talk about different contexts that your work has been done in this place. You can say, oh, you're doing something in business, but it has been done in marketing, it has been done in tourism. But empirical framework, you stay within the scope of business, what has been done in business, and you're trying to get that framework from it. Then we talk about the outputs, a critical discussion and synthesis of existing knowledge. So like I've explained before, you talk about the model, the table or summary showing relationship and evidence of the research gap. Role in research, it provides the background and justification for the study. It provides evidence supporting the variables, the relationship and direction of the study. For the scope, is wider and more comprehensive, is narrowed and focused on a research evidence. So with that, I believe you should be able to understand what literature review is. So now we are going to academic citation. So what is citation? A citation is a reference to the source of information, ideas, data, or quotations used in academic writing. It acknowledges the original authors and enable readers to locate the source. Why do we cite? We cite to avoid plagiarism. That is the key point. That is what you need to have at the back of your mind. Plagiarism is a sin in the court of research. If you put somebody's work that is not your work, you've plagiarized. And they don't take it lightly in academia. What is not yours, you don't claim it's yours. So it helps to acknowledge the work of other researchers. It shows rigor. It supports arguments with credible evidence. It enhances the credibility of your research. A paper that doesn't have adequate citation or a good citation is not a credible research. It's not a credible research at all. It's just a blog telling us a story. So it also enables the reader to locate the original source of your idea. Please, if it is not your original idea, it should be cited. Even though you paraphrase a particular word, you need to cite. And I'll show you the different types of citation. So what should be cited and what not should be cited? So when an idea is coming from an author's interpretation or argument, you cite it. When it's a statistic or a data, maybe a global internet users reach 5.5 billion in 2024 using from Starter, you need to cite what you got your information from. If you got it from World Bank, you need to cite it. If you got it from Age UK, you need to cite it. When you have a table, figure, or image that is not yours, a graph or diagram that is taken from a published source, it is not yours. Even though if you have a diagram that you change something from, you need to say adopted by the main source. So now it is not, you're trying to get a table or a figure that has been used somewhere else, but you are trying to do a different diagram, or you are trying to show your visual skill, or you are trying to recreate it. You need to say you are adopting this idea and you're placing it in yours. So you're not going to say it's your idea because it is not fresh from your brain. So it is not fresh from your ideas. So you don't need to leave it blank and claim it as yours. So when you're talking about definition, also is a published definition of digital transformation. So when you are defining a particular context, you cite. When you're trying to use theories and models, you cite. When you're trying to do direct quotation, when you're trying to use author's exact word, please, if you're trying to use author's exact word, and especially if you're taking it from a book, you use quotation mark and you add the page number. You put the citation and you add the page number. Also, like I explained before, the paraphrased information, restating another author's idea in your own word, you need to cite. The only time you don't cite a source is you should cite any information, ideas, or material that are not your own original work. I put it here again that when should you cite a source is you should cite any information, idea, or material that are not your own original work. But when you shouldn't cite, if they're your original ideas, maybe your conceptual framework, anything that, or maybe a reflection from different arguments, you don't need to cite it. Types of citation. There are different types of citations. We have the in-text citation. This appears within the body of the text and it can be in two different ways. We have the narrative citation. This is what starts the beginning of a sentence. Like maybe you're trying to say, Creswell and Creswell 2023 argues that literature review provide the foundation for research. So Creswell and Creswell, this is what they said exactly. So you didn't paraphrase it. You only explain it in their own words. So you say, Creswell and Creswell argues that literature review provide the foundation. You're not saying it that's what they said, but you've paraphrased it, but this is what they meant exactly. When you're talking about parenthetical citation, this is the citation you use at the end of a particular thing. Maybe you're saying literature review provide the foundation for research. So parenthetical is not a finding. Parenthetical is like you're trying to explain what the person said. Narrative citation is more of you're trying to argue that this is what the person said. This is what the person found. And based on what this person found, this is what it means. So this is more of a direct quote that has been paraphrased, but this is more of a reflection of your thoughts. So the second one is a reference list citation. This appears at the end of the document and provide complete bibliographic details of what you're trying to say. So this is done in APA 7 style of citation, because it is the citation we use in my institute. So if you see the author name comes first, then the date, then the topic, then the publisher, or maybe if it has a publication number or index number or anything. So we have different types of citation styles. So the first one I used the other time is APA 7 types of citation. So we have different citations. We have APA 7, which is mostly used in the UK, and we have Harvard, which is mostly used in the US sometimes. So sometimes they change it. Sometimes they use Harvard, sometimes they use MLA, sometimes they use Chicago. But most of the time in the UK, we use APA 7. We use APA 7. We've got, so an example of APA 7, we have Creswell and Creswell 2023. And you see the way it is being cited, because this is a citation that is done at the back of a sentence. This is the parenthetical type style of citation. And if you're citing more than 2 authors, you say Cutler et al. Dot then comma 2021. That's for APA 7. The meaning is you have the author plus year of publication. But for Harvard, you have, for the parenthetical style of citation, you see Creswell and Creswell. So instead of them having this sign, they have and. So they stick with the Cutler et al. Dot comma 2021. But if you're having 2 authors, you have to put Creswell and Creswell. That's the Harvard style of citation. Also, for MLA, we have the Creswell and Creswell 45 type of citation. That means author plus page number. So the page number is page where the information appears. So, normally it's supposed to be 23, but in MLA, it's where the page, it's where it appears. That is what you're citing. So that could be, you can also say Creswell and Creswell dot 7 if you're saying that this citation is in your reference number, that's reference 7. And if you have 2 or more authors, we have the Cutler. So, in this part, we have Cutler et al. But here you just say Cutler dot 45. So it's showing that this author are more than 3. Then we have the Chicago author, the Chicago style, which is the Creswell and Creswell 2023. But here, the difference between Chicago and MLA is the Cutler et al. The 2021 author and year, but there is no comma. And it's mostly used in history, art, and social science. Then we have IEEE. This is most times is always common in applied science. You see them, you put the 1, 2, page 45. So the 1 is trying to tell you that in the reference number that has the full citation list, the reference is number 1. So they've cited number 1 of the reference number. Maybe if Cutler is the number 1 in the reference, they have already cited it here. Then if it is 2 or more, they just put page 2, page 45. Like, they're going to put the citation, but they'll put the page number for you to be able to know where the context is being gotten from. But sometimes it's really optional. You only use that if you have a textbook. But I want you to note that there is no black and white answer for citation style. Always follow your institution or journal required citation style. So every journal you're trying to write, they'll tell you the citation that is preferred. And you can also always try to explore more to be able to know them. evaluating academic sources. So there are different ways of getting academic sources. So in academia, we use peer-reviewed journal articles, academic book, conference proceedings, government publications, international organizational reports. Not all international organizations that are used, the ones that are credible, the ones that have a report case. So sometimes we don't use industry report that is not authoritative and it's not relevant. So if it is relevant and it's authorized, that's when we use them. So we use university publications. Sometimes we use trade publications, but it's not all trade publications we use. We use the relevant ones. Company reports, it depends on the context of your work. If you are doing a particular work that has to do with a brand, you can use their report, but you have to trade with caution. Newspapers, magazines, it's not all newspapers and magazines that tell the same story. There are some newspapers that has been adequately written rigorously. It has gone through peer review. It has been edited. So we use official statistics, National Statistics Office, World Bank, UN data. But one thing you should avoid is using Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not an academic research paper. Personal blog is not. Social media post is not, but can be a reference to, it can be a signposting tool, but you cannot reference it and say, oh, this is, you signpost maybe what someone else has said, and you're trying to evidence it by signposting them to a social media post. And it depends on if you're doing a research on social media. Anonymous website, it is not allowed. AI-generated content as a primary source, commercial website or unverified online source is not used. So when you're trying to use academic resources, you need to evaluate carefully the credibility, the accuracy and relevance of company reports, news article, and professional website before citing them. And always try to avoid unreliable source. And the golden rule to using good citation is the credibility of your research depends on the credibility of the source you use. So if you use a good peer-reviewed journal, try to learn to use journals that are top journals in the CAB list or SkyMago, any citation listing thing you use. I think you need to know which one is the Q1 journal, which one is the Q2 journals and Q3 journals. And if your citation ranking starts with Q4, Q3, just know the A journal you need to use and the B journals. This gives credibility to your works, and it shows that you are talking about something relevant and something that someone has done with so much rigor, and it directs you to the right source. So we've got the reference manager, which I'm going to show you, but that will be after this. I'm trying to rush up a bit so that I'll be able to do some practical. So we've got the reference manager, and we have different types of reference management software. So reference management software is a digital tool that helps research, collect, organize, store, manage, and cite scholarly source efficiently. What can it do? It helps to store journal articles and books. It organizes, it retrieve and search, but it doesn't do your reference for you. It doesn't automatically solve your reference. It doesn't automatically cite your paper. It doesn't automatically look for the website. It's not an AI generated thing. It's something that helps you. It's a software that helps you, but you still have to do the manual work. So if you already have articles on your reference manager, you can automatically generate bibliographies. It helps to sync references across devices. It depends on what reference manager you're using for it to be able to sync references across devices. There's some reference manager that are AI inclined to. Those kind of reference manager, you have to pay for it. So the key message here is reference manager saves times, it improves accuracy and reduce citation errors. So Why use a reference manager? Why don't you do it manually? Like I've said it before, it helps you to save time. And when I was starting this paper, I talked about cloud storage. Like when you're trying to save your article, like when you're doing it manually and saving it to your computer could crash. And if it's crashed, all your references is gone. But if you have a reference manager, you could always get your references back. And it helps to support multiple type of styles. It helps you to, it does the job of getting the different style you want your references to be. And it also helps to facilitate collaboration, and it improves accuracy. So types of reference management software and how they are used. We have the Zotero. Zotero is free. Mendeley is free, but EndNote is not free. If you're using EndNote, it's more an advanced reference. You have to pay for it. So, but Zotero, it helps you to use and collect, organize, and store sites, academic journals. But I use Mendeley most of the time. So I use Mendeley to store my data, and I use my Beep to help with my citations. So I don't, like I said, I don't do citations manually. I do it on a software. But if I'm doing my citation, I also cross-check, because these are software. They are not humans. They make mistake also. They don't have zero errors. They make you mistake, because sometimes when you have a paper that was first published, that was accepted in 2021 and was published in 2024, you cite the published date, not when it was accepted. I don't know if you understand. Like when a paper, when you have a paper, it is not the date that was cited, that was accepted, that you cite. Is the published date that you cite. So sometimes this software only picks the accepted dates instead of the published dates. So you need to always cross-check if they are giving you the right thing. But it helps you to store data, it helps you to organize your source, and it helps you to annotate PDFs, which I will show you in a minute. So best practices for managing references. It's important to reference directly from database. It organizes references into folders. It checks imported metadata for accuracy. It backs up your library regularly. Using one citation style consistently is important. Don't use a particular citation and change it to another. You need to, for a particular study, you need to be consistent with your citation style. It reviews automatically generated references before submission. And don't is enter references manually unless necessary. Don't mix citation styles. Ignore missing authors' names or publication years. And don't assume that references are always correct. Please, this is really important. Don't assume they are all, sometimes it can be wrong. I am a witness of that. So that is the end of the paper. And the reflection is, if a reader finishes your literature review, they need to understand three things: what is already known, what is still unknown, and why does your research matter? The word that is ending is, why does your research matter? You need to sell a case. Thank you. Stanley, is it okay for you to stop recording so that I'll be able to share my what I need to show people?
I'm going to stop recording now. I'll just pause. I'll pause the recording, right?
Oh no, I don't trust that. I'm sorry. This is more of my schoolwork, so I don't want to.
Okay. Do you mind taking questions first? Then maybe after taking questions.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Okay. Room for questions. Thank you.
That was such an insightful presentation, Sandra. Very insightful. I learned a lot. I was even taking notes on my own end, right? Very insightful. And I can see the participant all excited, right? Even people in the comment section. That was so good. You get. Thank you so much. Excellent session, clear, detailed, and engaging. Thank you, ma'am. Yes. Yes. So if you have questions, raise your hand. Indicate, or you can drop your questions in the comment section. Yes, if you have questions. Thank you so much. Yes, that was good. Yeah. So yes. Chidima Uminaji. Yes, your question. You can unmute yourself and speak. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sandra, for this session. I really enjoyed the session and I learned a lot of new things. So my first question is, okay, I'll start from the citation part.
Yeah.
So for like I'm going to give a practical example because that's the challenge I'm having. So for instance, when I'm conducting a research and I'm getting my information from like UN websites, like not a published UN document, like when you go to their website when they're trying to discuss issues. So now how do I cite that website?
So UN website is United Nations, right? So
Yes.
you use it completely. You say it depends on the reference you're using. So I use APA. So that's why I would have loved to show you something like that so that you'll be able to see it very well, but I would use my words. So you just say United Nations, that's the author, that's the name of the organization. Then you put the year. So sometimes, because I do my references with the software, it generates it for me automatically. So if you check your website now, if you check my bib and you click on, let me just show you something. Am I still sharing? Sorry, just want to show you.
No, you've stopped sharing. You stop sharing.
Let me show you.
Precious.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it.
Okay,
Is it not better like you pause since she doesn't want you to
no,
she
so
can,
she
you can
said she doesn't trust the pause.
I
So
don't
I was
trust
saying
posts.
but if you pause, nothing will happen. Yeah.
after,
I think
yeah,
it's Victor's
I
one.
was saying that after she answers questions, then we can
Okay,
like
you can post this
end the
one,
record.
but the other ones I will just show the ones that I want to show. You can post this one, then I'll show
Okay.
one.
Okay. Yeah,
IBIB is not a reference manager, but it helps to help your citations. So I'll show you a reference manager. Mendeley is a reference manager. A reference manager is somewhere you could put your PDF and you could read documents and annotate the documents. It's manage a lot of references. Like it's manage a lot of references. If I open my reference manager, you see what I've done. You could put your ideas on your reference manager and that. But when my bib is more, it helps you to do your citation. But please, it sometimes can be wrong. You need to actually check what I was explaining about the date it was accepted and when it was published. Because sometimes your work can be accepted in 2021 and be published in 2023. So you need to be sure, and it's the published date you cite, not the accepted date.
So my bib is not a reference manager. Okay, yes. The other one is more like a citation generator, citation
Yes,
manager.
citation generator.
Okay.
It's a citation generator. It helps you organize your citation. So in my bib, you can download your references too. So you could download your references. I do that every time. So even I teach my friends, so I don't struggle with references because struggling with references is a big deal. Like I don't struggle with that because I have other things to do than struggling with references. So you can download your references because that's helped you to organize it in alphabetical order. It has done everything for you. You just need to just download. Just when you're generating your citation, just be sure that you are generating the right thing sometimes. And you can use DOI also. If you have the journal, you can use a DOI. So your DOI can also take you to the journal.
Yeah, the journal. I mean, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
For people that don't know what DOI here means, do you mind clarifying?
I'll show you.
Yeah.
I'll show you.
Yeah.
I think someone has a question. I'll show you all these things.
Okay. Yeah, so Nzekwe Sandra has a question. She raised her hand. Then after Nzekwe Sandra, Chidima would go
Yeah.
next. Yes, Sandra, please unmute your mic.
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, please, my question is about this reference manager and then the my P. This because I normally use mentoring, but there are some problems I face about mentoring. I notice if the journal is not in PDF form, it does not add to mentoring. Like if I download it in mentoring, I'm trying to cite it, it will not work unless it's a PDF file. And then sometimes mentoring, I don't know, there are some work that after downloading it, if you're trying to add it to mentor, like maybe you're writing something and then you want to add citation, and then some of it might not really work. So I don't know if she can like demonstrate it to know if maybe if we are really doing the right thing. And then this, I also have a question in my PIP. So this my PIP, you say it's not a reference manager. So I don't know. And you say it's also site, just like mental, because I know you can also use mentoring to site. So why have mentoring, Setura, and then you still have my peeps when mentoring can like cite and also add a reference, so that I will know, so that it will not be confusing, because when you now have different, you might not be confused. So I would like her to explain the two very well. Or can my peep add the reference to at the end, maybe after citing, then at the end of your work, can it add reference how mentoring does? So I want to understand it well. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you
for your
for that
question.
question, Sandra.
Thank you
Yeah.
for your question. So I use, the beautiful thing is I use Mendeley. Mendeley is from Science Direct. They are the owner of Mendeley. I use Mendeley a lot, and I use my beep. The reason why I use my beep, because it makes my work very easy. Mendeley stresses the hell out of me. I understand your pain, but I'm telling you, if you are doing a lot of work, I am reviewing 100, 200 papers, and sometimes I don't have that time to start battling with Mendeley. So what I do use my Mendeley for is for my references, to manage my references. So if I want to, when I mean manage my references, if I download a paper, I put it in Mendeley and I create different columns according to my themes. I'm going to show you later how I'm doing it so that you'll be able to understand what I mean. So the references, I read on Mendeley. So I use Mendeley to read, because when I use Mendeley, I used to annotate. I do my PDF annotation. It allows me to note. But when you're trying to download citation, it gives a funny way, which I don't have the patience for. I'm a researcher that I sometimes I have zero patience for something that I know that I can do easily. So the quick way for me to do it is to use my beep, and I've been using my beep since when I've been in masters, and it has never flopped me. The only thing I'm telling you right now is that when you check correctly, it just helped me to generate my citation. It generates my citations and help me to download my references. So it's just like helping you to do your reference lists. Your reference managers help you to keep your PDF, but Zotero does the two together. But sometimes it asks for advancements, like maybe it asks for more money to do some advanced searches or do some other things. Zotero does that. But when it comes to my beep, I've used my beep for years now, and it has never asked me for money. But these two, so I don't know how to do complex things. I know I like to break my task. So Mendeley manages my file. My beep manages my citation list. And that is how my brain works. So I don't know how to do one thing in one place. It's confused me. So like the way it confuses you to do two different things, it confuses me to do one thing. Because if I'm looking for something, I know where to go to. So sometimes when I download papers and I put it in Mendeley, I don't really get my papers. Like sometimes I'm looking for it, I don't know where to find it. I go to my citation list and I'm like, oh, this is what I'm looking for. I go to the citation, download the bibliography, put it back on Google Scholar and download it and get my paper back and put it on Mendeley. So that's what I do. It's just, it helps, it's for ease and complications. I just want you to understand that your MyBib is for your citation. It helps you generate your citation instead of you doing it manually. Yes, Mendeley does that, but it complicates stuff for people. Like it complicates it. It complicates it. I've tried it and it's really complicating. But the way MyBib does it, it makes it easy. It really makes it easy. So we have different citations lists or reference managers. We have Brian AI, we have the EndNote, we have RefWalk. RefWalk also helps you to generate your citation too. So there are different this thing. Reference manager manages your citations and manages your reference. Your citations, MyBib generates citations. I think that's the simple way I can explain. Do you understand, Sandra?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I understand. Okay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes. So Raphael, Raphael, you have a question?
Yes, please, thank you very much. And then
You're welcome.
Presenter for today. She has really done justice to the topic. And I want to ask her this. Sometimes if I want to cross-check my sources, I want to be sure that they are actually published works, they are original. I copy the whole reference this thing and put in Google Scholar. And then please, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
So maybe I want to be sure that the references that I have at the bibliography side are genuine. And then anybody who wants to cross-check my work and be sure that, yes, has this guy done a genuine work? If I want to be sure of that, what I do is that I copy the whole reference one by one to Google Scholar to see whether the paper that I've cited in the work will show on Google Scholar. I wanted to be sure, is there any other way we can cross-check that if sometimes Google Scholar is not getting that paper out? Is there any other way we can cross-check our references to be sure that, yes, they are genuine published works in the literature?
Okay. First of all, I want to throw a question back to you. Sorry. Where did you get your journal from first? Where did you get your journal that you're cross-checking? Where did you get it from? Did you get it just from Google or Google Scholar or use a different database?
So yes, I might download some from Google, but maybe I don't know. When I generate the references out of it, normally I do the references by myself. It's today that I got to know that we have Mendeley and then this thing. I when I finish my work, sometimes I give it to AI to generate the references out for me.
Now you're speaking. So first of all, oh, sorry, Dan, continue. Sorry. I just wanted you to talk about the AI because I know that's AI for sure.
Yes.
First of all,
yes,
Google Scholar, Scopus, Web of Science, and all other type of software which I'm going to show you, PubMed. They give you peer-reviewed journals. Scopus, PubMed, Web of Science give you peer-reviewed journals. Google Scholars, you can have a mixture of both. You can have peer-reviewed journals and journals that are just publish as fast as possible. Yeah. But if you're using an AI-generated reference, it could be wrong because AI makes mistakes. However, if you get a journal from Google Scholar, you can also use MyBib to check the credibility of the journal, which I'm going to show you. Do you understand? So you don't need to put all your references in an AI or anything. So when you have MyBib, it shows you if the reference is credible and if it is not credible, or if you should trade with caution. And I'll give you examples. Do you understand?
Yes, please, I get you. So I'll just wait for that time and
Yes, I'll just show you. Who's next? Wait, with the next person before I start the practical. That's the question.
Is he in the market or something?
Cassie, I think it's Cassie Geraldine.
Yeah,
Gerald.
it's Cassie.
Yes.
I think Chidima has a question.
Chidima, you have a question.
Yes, I have one more question.
One, please. I'm telling you, Precious, the best way for you to do answer by question is if I do the practical. So I think you need to stop recording. I really think so that they'll be able to get the full information. I'm being serious.
Okay.
Because we would have to just keep going in circles.
Okay, I think I mean we can stop recording.
We've covered everything on the slide that people need to know.
Yeah.
But for them to be able to have a practical understanding, I need to show them. And I think we need to just stop recording.
Okay. So yes, I think I will do that now.
Thank you. Sorry,